Welcome everyone to the RIS webinar, Time to Rip Off the POS Band-Aids and Maximize Sales, which is hosted by RIS News and presented by Jesta IS. Hello, I'm Joe Scarupa, Editorial Director of RIS, and I'm really glad you could be with us today. As we all know, pulling off a Band-Aid slowly is more painful than removing it at once. This is also true for software. If you're using an old POS system, one that wasn't designed for today's business demands, then your ability to manage new processes, maximize sales, and increase customer engagement is severely constrained. Many retailers today are stuck using legacy POS software modified by adding plugins that provide interim fixes to deeper problems that act as choke points at the free flow of data between core applications. This patchwork approach doesn't allow for real interoperability for important functions like mobile POS, for example, nor does it provide a single version of the truth across channels. Well, in this web session, Sahir Anand of EKN Research, Stephen Kwan of Jesta IS, and Rob Henneke of RPE will examine the evolution of POS software and explain how new platforms are opening up new opportunities. During this webcast, you'll find out about symptoms of outgrowing your POS software and how to know it's time to make a change. Placebos don't work, and why retrofitting isn't a viable solution. Finding the right cure to what to look for when searching for the correct fit for today and for the future. Well, here today to talk about these important POS topics is Sahir Anand, Vice President of Research and Principal Analyst for EKN Research. Sahir's experience spans 14 years as a retail industry line of business practitioner, a technology industry analyst, research leader, and global technology strategy marketing executive. Sahir has worked with such top-tier retailers as Staples and Nordstrom, which was followed by a 6-year stint leading retail and consumer industry research, assisting leading global retailers, consumer goods companies, and solution providers at Boston-based Aberdeen Group. Since 2014, Sahir has been co-managing research, consulting, and advisory board activities at EKN Research, a media and research company focused on retail, consumer goods, and hospitality industries. Welcome back to our webinar series, Sahir. I know this is a topic that is near and dear to your heart, and I'm looking forward to hearing about insights from your latest research. Welcome, Sahir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe, and to the RIS team. Always a pleasure.
All right, Sahir. Well, fortunately for us, we've got a couple of other good folks on our panel today, and joining us is Stephen Kwan, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Jesta IS. Stephen has accumulated 20 years of experience in sales of retail and ERP solutions. He provides consultation, on processes covering store operations, sourcing, inventory management, CRM purchasing, distribution, and logistics, with experience in SaaS-based deployment and infrastructure. Stephen has built and led sales and marketing organizations across North America, Asia, and Europe. He has consulted and implemented complex retail and sourcing enterprise solutions for many international multi-brands within the apparel, jewelry, cosmetic, and shoe industries. Glad you could join us today, Stephen. Looking forward to your insights.
Thank you very much, Joe. Looking forward to our webinar.
Yeah, we've got a good lineup today. And finally, Stephen and Sahir joining us is Rob Henneke, Executive Vice President for RPE, who has more than 30 years of management and consulting experience in merchandise operations, systems, sales, distribution, and special projects. Rob works closely with clients providing insight into retail processes and best practices. Prior to joining RPE, Rob was a general merchandise manager for a national big box sporting goods chain. At RPE, Rob leads the consulting team working with retailers to create omnichannel solutions to optimize sales, increase margin, and manage inventory. Welcome today, Rob. Glad you could be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I look forward to sharing some of my thoughts with the audience.
Yes, and speaking of the audience, I've got one more thing I want to point out, one more thing I want to remind you about, because I'm sure a lot of you have been with us before. But just so you know, we always encourage you to make this session as interactive with us as possible. We're going to jump right into our content. But I do want you to know that there are web tools on your screen. Please use them. Send us questions or comments at any time during the webinar, and we will definitely use them to shape our conversations. And by the way, we are going to have 3 interactive polling questions featured today. These are always good features. We've got 3 of them. Please answer these questions to let us know what you think the answer is to your questions, to our questions, we'll shape the topics we are talking about and give you the things you want to hear. So I guarantee it's going to be much more fun and informative for all of us the more you contribute, so we're really looking forward to that. Now let's get started. So here, let's bring you into our conversation. I know we've teed up several important considerations about current retail POS systems, but I'd like to know how you see this, with your research, how these topics fit into retailer priorities and store investments.
Yeah, Joe, you rightly pointed out, I think it's an extremely important topic, considering that in the next few weeks and months, we are going to see at least a sizable chunk of retail revenues being scored through the Black Friday weekend, and Cyber Monday, and then coming into the holiday season, right? So billions of dollars, both online and offline revenue. And that's why I think it's very important to think about what are the issues that retailers and those that help retailers put up stores and really keep the stores open. What issues are important to think about? So a couple of important points just as a prelude to some of what I wanted to present today is that, look, at the end of the day, there's no doubt that retailers of all shapes and sizes need to manage fixed store costs, and those have to be actively managed. There's no way out of that, right? And whether that is labor, whether that's occupancy costs, it could be costs related to your phone systems, your internet, bandwidth, network management, and you can go on and on, right? So those costs have to be managed, but it's also important and true that when you maintain store competency, you need to also manage the new store capex costs very carefully as a retailer. So those are given in the real world that we live in, and in today's environment where there is concern coming from several different facets, whether that's the potential increase in interest rates or the fluctuating markets and so on and so forth. So that all impacts consumer sentiments. And the reason I bring up the point around new store and capex spending, and why that all impacts stores and store operations as a whole, is because we conducted some research recently, and we found that 1 in 2 retailers are looking to continue spending into 2016 on new store openings, and they will continue to invest in adding products or SKUs in the stores. Not to mention that good 7 in 10 retailers anticipate that they will continue to drive online order sales through the stores, so they will fulfill more online orders to those stores. So what all that brings us to is, what is the future of stores, right? And that's critical to think about. There's going to be a lot of pressure on retailers as it relates to managing fixed costs, as it relates to managing capex of new store openings, getting an ROI, return on investment on that, and then changing the whole spectrum and responding to consumer sentiment as it relates to more online orders being fulfilled from the store than ever before, more SKUs being flooded in the stores, being able to really come back from the lackluster Black Friday from last year compared to 2013. A lot of things to be proven this year and in future years. So that's the future of the store, right? What do companies really, how do you bring about that revolution? So there are some key areas that we have identified in terms of our own strategic framework of how we look at the future of stores. And that includes, number one, an outstanding and inclusive brand experience. And the reason I say inclusive is because you cannot forget that while you do consumer segmentation in creating the right brand experience, you address the boomers, you address Generation X, who are the highest spenders or who have the disposable income to spend on retail products and services. But then you have emerging folks with disposable income and consumer cohorts like millennials. But now you also have Generation Z. That's the generation after millennials. And they will be pivotal to a lot of the retailers' plans in branding and awareness and advertising and the marketing aspects, pricing, promotions, and new product introduction. That's going to be pivotal, right? So that's about an inclusive brand experience, which is going to be very, very important in terms of key areas of the retail store revolution. Secondly is the omni-channel integration. So I'm not going to repeat myself. 7 in 10 retailers are looking to fulfill more orders, online orders from the store. That's going to change the inventory profile in the store. It's going to change the allocation in the store. It's going to change the labor profile. It already is changing those things. So what you're talking about is a unified way of serving the customer. Now, whether you want to call it omni-channel, you want to call it singular commerce, whether you want to call it all-channel commerce, doesn't matter. Point is, consumers want to be served in the same way, and they don't, terminologies don't matter, semantics don't matter. It's about an integrated story, and that story has to be, it has to appeal to the intelligent quotient of the customer, the hearts and minds of customers, as well as their emotional quotient, right? So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is personalized engagement. Extremely important. Personalization is going to be at the heart of what consumers want. We all want a more personalized experience. We all want the level of expertise when it comes to having a more personal way of shopping, of being greeted, of being served the right products and services based on our product history or on our buying history, and for retailers to relate with us based on our usage of their loyalty programs, and also the way we consume content. More importantly, that's how the personalization aspect becomes more important, because that, quite frankly, that's what convinces us to buy products every day, is how we personalize our own experience, and whether the retailer understands that or not, it dictates whether we go back to them, right, or whether we leave them. Technology enablement. In all of this that I spoke about, all the pillars, they are not possible to implement if there is the lack of technology. So we'll discuss that, and I think there are plenty of folks on this call who can shed light on the technology element. So let me just discuss for a second is the top business challenges as it specifically relates to the stores. By the way, what I'm talking about today is fresh off the press. It's not been released even to through the media, or hasn't been published. It's a survey that we have collected some very fresh data from about 100 retailers, and of course the RIS community has responded to the survey. So number one, consistency. Store operations is all about consistency. Having, all the ducks lined up, the SVP of store operations anticipates, expects that all stores should work in unison when it comes to store processes, store systems, whether it is about store customer management, whether it is about store inventories, whether it is about store dispositions, whether it is the acceptance of online orders in the stores, return and exchange of online orders, everything should work in unison. The associates and the managers are all in sync. Now, that's the ideal world. The truth is that it's not working in sync. 1 in 2 stores cannot really consistently execute merchandising campaigns. That poses a lot of challenge in busy seasons in terms of in-season management, Black Friday, holiday season, back to school. Not to mention that customers see the lack of consistency, and that's when they change their brand loyalty, right? And you cannot afford that as a retailer. Number 2, deeper integration between all the in-store processes. So that really comes to the point where at least a third of retailers have told us that shopper insights are not being uniformly updated or being used at the headquarters when it comes to planning of merchandise for stores, when it comes to pricing and promotions, when it comes to store layouts, when it comes to store props and signage. So it's a major issue, right? The integration of different in-store processes. That's what most people who manage stores fight for every day. And it's a big challenge, and it's something which is a controllable, but it becomes very challenging when you're dealing with 1,600 stores or 2,000 stores or even 1,000 stores. I say even a few hundred stores. And every organization that is big or mid-size or small knows that integration of in-store processes creates one view of customer and one view of inventory, right? So it's critical in that sense. The third element is the legacy systems. Big issue in the stores. Legacy systems need to be uprooted. They have been, made to work together somehow because there has been a system in retail where 50% of the IT budget goes towards maintaining existing systems. The patchwork has worked in a certain sense, but it has not worked because when you have omni-channel transactions and the volume of transactions, that's the way it's going up every year by 10% or 12%, your systems are also pushed and pulled, and they have to be responsive to the omni-channel volume requirements, to the omni-channel content requirements, to the omni-channel inventory requirements, right? So you're talking about volume that is increasing, number of customers and traffic that has actually seen better years than in the last 3 years compared to the previous 5 years. So since 2007, we have seen better times in the last 3 years. You're talking about software capabilities that have to be upgraded, cannot be 2007 or 2006 capabilities, right? So it's important to think about that. Now, while you think about all of this, it's important to also note that stores have certain business priorities. It's not just about putting up a stores and customers will come, they'll buy the merchandise and leave. The fact is, stores have to maintain very high standards of excellence when it comes to customer satisfaction or net promoter scores. They have to maintain very high standards of excellence and a certain type of continuity when it comes to shopper experience. And these stores today, this is the third point which is very critical, that in previous years we never saw omni-channel order fulfillment as becoming so important to the store. All of a sudden, everybody in the top level executive teams in retail, whether it's a small retailer, mid-sized retailer, or a large retailer that owns stores, they are looking at their capex cost, they are looking at their fixed costs, and they're saying, hey, by the way, let's look at the ROI element and see how omni-channel order fulfillment can actually help us reduce cost per order. How can it help us reduce and optimize cost by store? And that, I think, is compelling. It's a compelling value prop. So when you think about all of this, then you start to think about, okay, here are the business priorities, i.e., you've got customer sat, you've got shopper experience, omni-channel order fulfillment, then what are the store investment priorities? So omni-channel initiatives still rank number one for store executives and for CIOs. We may not like to use and reuse the term omni-channel, but retailers still like it. They still like it, right? Secondly, CIOs and senior executives in retail care a lot about security and compliance, especially payment security, PCI security, security related to consumer data and consumer privacy. They care a lot about it because what it turns into is a very ugly scene when you have to pay millions of dollars in lost data. And no CEO or no executive in retail wants to deal with that situation. Loyalty and promotions, very, very important from a technology investment standpoint. And then you can go down the list: inventory management, in-store mobility or mobile POS, payment system upgradation, productivity systems, and so on and so forth. But the fact is that in these technologies, you can find the future of store. Now, question is, are you going to leap and say set up the next stage evolution in shopper experience. And how do you do that? In exploring all of that, we have some great people from the Jester team. And Joe, we have some polls as well, where we can ask the audience to do some polling and give us those answers. Over to you, Joe.
Well, thanks a lot, Sahir. Glad to hear that you have that data that ties into our key topics. And speaking of key topics, what we're going to be doing now is zeroing in on how our audience responds to this interactive polling question. So please use your interactive tools. The question we're going to be asking is very simple. We'd like to find out from you so we can address our comments to you. How old is your POS? We give you three options. Is it less than 3 years old? That would be a relatively recent refresh. Is it between 3 and 7 years? In that case, it's probably a little long in the tooth, and you're probably thinking and planning maybe what your next POS is. But if you click C, and I think a fair number of retailers are probably going to be in that category, that would be more than 7 years. So see here, you and I have done studies on POS, for a long time, and we really know that POS goes through a refresh cycle. It's always a certain percentage of retailers who have done the refresh recently, a certain percentage who are beginning to get old in the tooth, and a certain percentage of retailers, for whatever reason, they extended far beyond its what I would consider to be its natural life. And we're beginning to get the results in now, and see here, it looks like the vast majority of our retailers have a POS in place that's more than 7 years old.
Wow, and that kind of goes back to the point that we do have 2006, 2007 infrastructure, and perhaps even older. So we ought to look at, obviously everyone has to find out their own ways, but there is a need for that upgradation cycle that even our research is showing that, Joe.
Okay, Steve, we're going to bring you into our discussion, and Steve, let's address our comments now that we know that the majority of the retailers listening in today have old POS systems. They're going to be looking for new ones, and the reason they're going to be looking, I believe, is because the stores aren't dead. Let's face it. Right? Stores might be giving way to digital retailing, but on the other hand, I believe stores aren't dead. What do you think?
Well, Joe, I agree with you. Really, the store isn't dead, and actually, based on multiple surveys, we see that 70% of total retail sales are still generated through those physical stores. But like Sahir had mentioned in the slides, the nature of the store is going to be changing. Really, those stores are becoming hubs for omni-channel sales, or really mini distribution points. Basically, buy online, pick up at stores, or buy online and ship to clients. This is really the nature of how stores are becoming. For the stores are not just places now to shop, but really they're becoming a destination or an extension of the digital experience. Retailers who really adopt the strategy early in the game will really benefit. So we really see that the whole concept of POS at the stores are really changing to that point, and to reinforce what Sahir was saying. And to achieve this experience, means the stores really and employees need to interact as consultants versus just being sales associate, and provide a digital shopping experience within the store. And we see this interaction will really minimize store lost sales, as well as increase the basket size. Interactive associate mobile tools and client kiosks tied in with the beacon technology to push incentives will encourage that interaction. Just like on the survey from Sahir, we see that mobility is becoming part, but really to achieve the rest and that interaction, we see the mobility playing a very strong role, because that's how retailers or clients are shopping today. They're using their phones. We want this interaction to really will stop lost sales. We're helping increase the basket size. Interactive associate mobile tools and client kiosks will really be the key. The store now is becoming really the place to experience the brands with the clients versus just serving them. So POS solutions need really to support this type of concept.
So Sahir, if the store isn't dead, what does that mean for retailers, looking to plan out their next POS or looking at their current POS or just thinking about their POS strategy?
That's a great point. Now, taking on large-scale, thick client, point-of-sale, rip and replace strategies can be a big stifle point. It can be a sticking point with the CFO of the company. Can lead to several types of procedural delays within the organization. By the time you make up your minds, you're 2 years into the decision. Especially even for mid-size organizations, I think it's a critical decision on how soon you can replace and how can you start to measure ROI, in introducing the latest and greatest in terms of point-of-sale systems. So what I recommend is that organizations think about more of a thin client, thick client hybrid approach. That means that some of the data you own within your store or headquarter data center, and some of the data is actually uploaded in the cloud. You still have offline capabilities in the store, so you can still process and take care of the customer in the store. You can process transactions. You can do secure transactions while being offline. But you have that level of flexibility, and you can kickstart a new program, a new store POS program within 6 months to a year. That's the ideal way to get an ROI very quickly from the new POS employment. And the other thing is that mobile in the store has also got to be thought out, Joe, because the business rules that you write for mobile are different, and they have to be friendly to the associate and to the customers. And a lot of times we've seen that introducing mobile POS in the stores have been done in stores where they are not appropriate. Like, for example, if you were to introduce mobile checkout for Nordstrom customers, why would that be useful? When you really want deeper engagement with the Nordstrom customer, and you don't want to just have a checkout conversation. So you have to think about what are you using, what business rules you're using for which type of store format.
Well, Sahir, let's take a look at a futurist here. To quote Doug Stevens, make no mistake about it, the golden age of retail lies stretched out before us. How we shop will change more in the next 20 years than it did in the previous 1,000. I happen to agree with that topic, but it's really something that I'm trying to tie this into POS. So, Rob, how can you tie this view into what retailers are thinking about for their next POS?
Well, the audience may be wondering if we've made a mistake on the slide and why we're showing a bunch of cell phones instead of a bunch of POS devices. But keying off of some of the things that have already been said, POS and the store are going to go through a revolution. They're going through a revolution. The function of the store is changing. And if you really think about it, that's an awful lot like the telephone. 140 years ago, some guy named Graham Bell invented the telephone, but for over 100 years, we were tethered to a line. It was a big, bulky item, and it really only had a single function. Now, if you fast forward to 2007, that's where we really had the big revolution, and the iPhone was introduced. And so in today's world, instead of putting an alarm clock and a camera and a GPS device and all sorts of other things in my suitcase, I now just stick my cell phone in my pocket and I'm off to the races. It's certainly a lot more convenient. It's certainly a lot less technology to deal with. It's more modern. It works better. And it serves me a lot better. So the revolution to serve me and work in sync with everything else I'm doing, has just really changed the way I use the phone and I communicate with the rest of the world. Well, POS is no different. It's changed a lot recently. I think the difference is that the consumer is used to upgrading their cell phone every 2 years. I mean, the plans are all set up so that after 2 years, you're going to throw away your cell phone, and you're always going to have the latest technology. In POS, as the survey indicates, there's a lot of people that are still stuck in the pre-iPhone days, back in the days when your phone did a single function. Maybe they're trying to put some Band-Aids on it and make it do a little bit more than what it was originally designed to, but it's still, single function POS, take money from the customer. And I think the revolution and what we've gone through in the last few years and what we're going to go through in the next several years, it's important to have a POS system that really supports all of the functions that are happening in today's store.
Yes, absolutely. And Rob, we found out that our listeners are thinking along those lines because, about 70% of them actually have POS systems that are older than 7 years old. And, Rob, I think what we should do right now is jump to our second polling question. And, we learned a lot from our audience, and we're going to be able to shape our questions, our, discussions to that. But let's take a look at our second polling question now. What is the most important POS driver for your organization to replace its current system? And we've got a lot of answers here, so think about these as you're looking down the list. From top to bottom, we've got enable buy online, pick up in store, a critical component today, and certainly a good one because you're able to bring customers into your stores from digital purchasing, the digital path to purchase, add ship from store. As Sahir pointed out, fulfillment has really risen to the top of the priority list. Improve customer engagement. In the age of customer centricity, that makes sense. Empower associates with MPOS. No doubt about it. If you can do that, you're going to put your associates on a level playing field with always connected, well-informed shoppers. Protect customer data. Yes, you certainly want to have the best level of protection. And certainly a driver would be our technology is outdated, and I suggest that many of our listeners, if they have systems that are 7+ years old, certainly fall into that category. And I want to let Sahir know, and because he brought it up, but also Steve and Rob, that we are getting some questions in from our audience members, and they do touch upon something that Sahir brought up. And that has to do with, web-based, or I think Sahir called it a combination of thick client, thin client, and cloud POS and things like that. So let's be sure to get to that topic in a little bit. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is that the results for our second question, the one we have up now, we're seeing that the majority consider that their driver for POS is to improve customer engagement. This is the age of customer engagement, and I'm not surprised that it's risen to the top of the list. Second would be our technology is outdated, another critical driver. But the clear winner is improving customer engagement. So here, does that jibe with the research you've been seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really the key, right? In terms of being able to make your justification for how you want to be able to change your systems and why you want to be able to change your systems in the store. I think that our data shows that for stores, 1 in 2 stores are unable to identify their customers from a demographic and psychographic standpoint. Unlike e-commerce, where the predictive pattern of customer behavior, and you can identify customers based on specific behavioral trends. In the stores, you're unable to do that. So if you just imagine a world where you can identify a customer based on a unique identifier as they're entering the store through their loyalty card, or a chip-based loyalty card, could be their opt-in mobile phone that interacts with the store manager directly as they're entering the store based on their past wish list, or a direct relationship with an associate. You've got engagement models in apparel, software, fashion, specialty, even department stores where you have very personalized relationships with associates and long-term buying habits with specific associates. So all of that, I think, contributes to a customer engagement model that is not just for today but for tomorrow as well. One other point which I'll make real quick is is more and more retailers are finding out that integrating wish lists, gift registry, integrating the ability to interact with the consumer's mobile app in the store for shopping, and the integration of digital loyalty and digital wallets is the way forward. And I think POS systems that allow for those things to happen are the POS systems for the future.
Well, Sahir, we've polled our audience about why they should upgrade their POS system, and I'm going to turn this over to Steve and certainly lay out some of the thinking you have along the answer to the question why.
Well, that's a good question, Joe. Thank you. Basically, retailers need to ask the following questions, and if some of these points ring home, then you really need to upgrade your POS systems. Like, for example, what is my technology platform today, and will it support my business in the next 5 years? With all the changes, you have to really look at what you have and see how it's going to support it. If I upgrade my POS hardware, will my POS software still run on that hardware, and can it support new operating systems like Windows 7 or higher? That becomes a big concern with the older technology today. Can it support the omni-channel and order management at store level? Again, like we talked, you don't want to try and cobble it. You want to really be able to provide that engagement and that experience. Does my POS system support real-time communication? Because if you want to support that omni-channel, that experience, you need to be fluid in your data and your flow of information across the whole network in the omni-channel. Can my solution support mobile applications in a seamless manner, again in real time, and the technology within the stores to support it? Does my POS solution foster client engagement with loyalty programs, with incentives and upselling all in real time, and that interaction with the client, as well as beacon technology? We see that becoming more and more relevant at store level. Is my POS solution a high maintenance? Do I have lots of moving parts to support? Again, with a lot of older systems, you see a lot of bolt-ons, and that becomes, again, as I said, cost aspects in supporting. Am I losing sales opportunities because I can't react fast enough, but my competitors can? Again, those are all factors that we have to look at. And again, as Sarah indicated, PCI compliances, and also to have the infrastructure to support new payment methods that are coming down that omni-channel clients are really looking for. And again, if these are some of the points that ring home with you, you know this is time to change and upgrade your POS system.
Well, Steve, we promised to tell our audience about ripping off POS Band-Aids. And, I'd like to ask the question at this point, what do we, refer to as POS Band-Aids? What are the POS Band-Aids we're talking about? And I want to turn that one over to Rob.
Well, POS Band-Aids, really are taking a legacy system, something that's been around for a while, and retrofitting it by adding on bolt-ons or modifications that really weren't initially intended to work with the system. So you're taking that 1990s cell phone and trying to use it for GPS. It just doesn't work. To some degree, it's like trying to put race tires on an old Ford Falcon. They may look good, but the car's not going to go any faster. The changing ecosystem is creating the need for operational changes. It really echoes a lot of what Stephen just said. There's plenty of temporary solutions available, but at the end of the day, those are just going to cause more headaches, more costs, more frustration for your associates and the customers, and really not solve the problem. The Band-Aid approach is an awful lot like a loan with an adjustable rate. It may be cost-effective in the beginning, but there's going to be surprises down the road. So you're much better off kind of taking a step backwards, deciding it's time to actually do something, rip off the Band-Aids, and put in a modern POS system that'll support your business today and into the future.
Well, that's a good way to look at it, Steve. What about, when it's time to replace your POS system, and we know that 70% of retailers have old POS systems in place, how do you diagnose when that moment really hits home and it is enough and it's time to replace?
Well, again, I think this echoes a lot of what Steve was saying a few minutes ago when he was talking about why upgrade. Some of those same questions apply to when it's time to upgrade. So if you're facing compliance issues, if your architecture is old and causing problems, if you've got security risks, if there's low satisfaction among your employees, your associates, your shoppers, your customers, if there's too many systems that you've got held together with baling wire, if you can't support mobility and omni-channel, if you can't ship from stores, if you can't see inventory across all of your locations, if you can't support order online, pick up in store, if you don't have a single view of the inventory across the enterprise, these are all reasons that make it important to finally take the dive and decide enough is enough. It's time to cut the maintenance cost. It's time to cut the heavy customization, get the siloed systems all under one roof, and make the change. And that could be, again, for technical reasons and or for functional reasons. As we saw in the survey a minute ago, better ways to serve the client ended up with about 50%, or client engagement ended up with about 50% of the votes.
Yep.
So the functional reasons are certainly hugely important.
So, Rob, I think you've outlined good reasons. You know when enough is enough. But, Steve, I want to bring you in here. And, retailers never really want to put in a POS that works for today. They want to leap ahead. They want to think about what it's like, what they need to do and solve the problems of the future. So what does a POS look like that solves both today's and tomorrow's problems?
Well, Joe, the first thing I think is the definition of POS is going to change. It's no longer going to be a point of sale, but really a point of service. And that just supports all the questions and the response we're getting is customer engagement. It's really how do we serve the client and engage with the client is what the new POS is going to look like in the future. Remember that interaction. We want to interact with the client, have the clients interact with the brand, and really expand that experience that is not just at the store, but across the whole omni-channel, but with the client. This new POS solution will, change that engagement, and we see it today in a lot of different forms. The Apple Store is a very good example of client engagement. Technology and mobile solutions play a real key role in how they support the clients through a sale, from product and features reviews to even product activation, inventory lookup, and concluding it to sales transaction. That's what we see going in the future is that type of interaction. Even through the support after sale, it's all through email notifications and confirming that you're next in line. But the main changes we see in client shopping in store is already here. Now, you remember the big buzzword a few years ago was showrooming. Clients were going in stores to look at products, but were buying online. In fact, now, what clients are really doing are using mobile devices to review product recommendations, trends, texting friends to ask advice with pictures of the products while they're in the stores. Basically, we want to engage clients at this level. So really, the point of service solution wants to simplify this and encourage this type of interaction. But with the associates, no longer, the associates of tomorrow will be using mobile POS solutions as tools to engage, interact, and to sell to clients. So traditional point of sale, as you know, will always exist, of course, but more as a support tool with mobility and a different way of how we interact with clients. It's really more service versus can I help you?
And then, of course, we've got, the relative importance of omnichannel shoppers because of their profitability and of retailers who use the stores as a delivery hub. So here, do you have some insight into these factoids that we're seeing on the screen?
I think One of the things that's really interesting is that for 3 out of 4 retailers, they're unable to really identify, at least I'm talking about U.S. retail, they're unable to identify their omni-channel shoppers, right? So the match rate between online, catalog, mobile, and in-store is requires a lot of work from an analytics standpoint, and I mean customer analytics. So I think that's one of the challenging areas, and that's one area where point of sale in a single version of truth through an integrated unified POS can really help. And by that I mean is you have integrated POS capabilities with e-commerce. So whether or not you have a unified code base, you can still process the orders in line with the requirements from customers and be able to identify them appropriately to do your pricing, to do your promotions, to really send them the unified content, or coordinated content across all channels, and especially as it relates to both digital and in-store content through mobile apps in-store. So all of that is critical. Now, the second point I'll make is building a delivery hub for online orders in the store is easier said than done. Having the software capabilities to do pick, pack, ship has been around in stores like Staples and other types of stores like FedEx and other types of retailers like even department stores. They've been shipping from the store for a very long time. Question is not that. Question is how integrated is that into your inventory allocation and really your point of sale system, so that your associates do not need to change different tablets, and they don't need to make other changes as it relates to point of sale systems being disparate from in-store shipping and fulfillment systems. So I think that I think is extremely critical. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, it answers the question, but it raises another question, and I'm going to ask this one to Stephen. What is the expected ROI when adopting new POS software?
Well, Joe, every retailer have different ROIs, and that all depends on where they're coming from. But the real end ROI that every company is looking for is increased sales, of course, and increase in repeat same sales. That being said, when adopting new POS solutions, to achieve this, you want to look at the following points and metrics, and that's what's going to help you to achieve that end result of increased sales. You really want to look at client-targeted loyalty promotions, incentives, as we saw at the beginning when Sarah was presenting. Increased customer satisfaction through personalized engagement and omni-channel options. These are key aspects that are going to help increase sales. Better assortment and inventory availability at store level, using the real-time forecasting and planning abilities due to data accuracy that's coming from the stores. Single platform, real-time communication. You want to reduce support costs and decrease downtime. You're looking at increased employee satisfaction with intuitive user interface on POS and mobile. And also solutions that require really minimal training. This is going to really help that intuitive flow. Mobility to support opportunities for upselling, cross-selling, ship to. These are all the aspects that you want to bring in. PCI payment compliances and architecture, and the ability to support new concepts of payment that come down the line, and the security of that processing of payments. Hardware compliance is also very important, able to support high-end configurations, redundancies. So you really want to be able to put in key technology and hardware that will support the end goal.
Well, I think that sort of answers the ultimate goal, the ROI goal, and that's a really important point. But so here, looking at some facts and figures, and I know you're the research guy, the numbers guy here, what sort of lift are we talking about here? What sort of, dollar figures, what sort of, numbers are we talking about?
It's a, it's a $1 million question. I wish, everybody had hard facts to show, what kind of lift we're talking about. Well, one thing we can determine with a new point of sale system within 3 years of activation can produce higher customer satisfaction from anywhere from 5 to 10% improvements, and that could be just purely because of faster transaction speed and greater agility, and the fact that you've got better UI. You have associates and cashiers who can manage their tasks more efficiently on the system. You can also, our research shows that systems that have integrated order fulfillment and buy online pickup in the store type of facilities, and they can look up customer order history when the customer comes to pick up the order, or like if you go to a Walmart store or another store, you have designated places where you go and pick up your orders. You can do your click and collect or what have you. The fact is, when you do come to the stores to pick up orders, if you have a unified system and the associate can help you track the order in the store, because oftentimes these orders do get lost in the store. So hopefully the associate can look up the orders on the same system and is not struggling from system to system to track the order within the store, within the four walls. Believe it or not, happens very often. When that happens, the associate is not able to cross-sell and upsell. Keep in mind that a number of retailers are able to cross-sell and upsell when online customers actually pick up orders in the store. So our data shows that if you have a unified system and the associates are empowered, even through their mobile POS devices, if they're able to track the order in the store, they're able to cross-sell, upsell fairly quickly, and they're able to see an 8 to 10% improvement or lift in the upselling, cross-selling across categories. So in effect, you actually increase your average transaction value and your basket. So those are just some examples of how you can improve aspects related to new systems enacting better productivity and better efficiencies in the store.
Okay, so here, so far everyone who's been listening to this webinar has heard the how and the why for thinking about upgrading your POS platform to something that can really handle the modern consumer, the modern retail pressures and challenges, and also position each retailer for the future. And now I want to ask each of you, we are running out of time, so I want you to keep your remarks very brief, but I want you to get your recommendations. Basically, I want to hear from you, what steps can a retailer take to move in the right direction when they're thinking about their future POS platforms? Let's start with you, Rob.
Sure. I think it's, in a few words, plan. Understand what your roadmap is going to be, have your strategy defined. Every day or hour that you spend up front will save many, many days at the back end. Way too often we see retailers do POS upgrades without proper planning, and at the end of the projects, there's panic, there's delays. Having a properly planned project is the biggest issue. Second biggest probably is having a vendor that is committed to the future, somebody that's going to support the new functionalities as they come into the marketplace. If you have those two things, I think you're in good shape.
So here I want to get your recommendations so our audience has something to take away with them.
Well, my recommendation is really twofold. I think if your organization has a problem with customer satisfaction in the stores, low employee empowerment, high turnover, the fact that you have transactions that have high cancellations or high number of aborted transactions, and you have point of sale security and data loss issues, as well as not to mention that if your systems go offline very often, you can have lost sales opportunity costs that add up very quickly. And by the way, that adds up if you account for all stores. It adds up very quickly into millions of dollars, over a period of time for when the systems are down and customers leave the store and don't buy products. So having said all of that, very important think about what you can do very quickly in terms of putting up the cost justification for a system upgrade or a system replacement when it comes to point of sale, right? If your system is 7 years or older, almost in all likelihood, it's not in line with the current UI interoperability of systems and the uptime of systems requirements, right? That are present generation leading into the next generation. So if you were to consider a cost modeling and an ROI model, can you challenge the solution provider to number one, launch your system within 6 months to give you full interoperability with mobile, omni-channel, loyalty, customer engagement, customer personalization, PCI, security, and payment upgradations, complete end-to-end within 6 months. Challenge the solution provider to do that. It's possible to do that. Otherwise, you run into cost overruns and your ROI model gets kind of funky. Secondly, to maintain a very strong profile when it comes to security and payments, to be on the cusp of innovation when it comes to integration with mobile apps and new payment methodologies, such as I'm not going to name the wallets, but you know which wallets I'm talking about. I'm talking about the digital wallets. So give consumers that empowerment. Give your employees that empowerment.
And Stephen, I want to hear a quick recommendation for you again quickly so we can wrap up and send our audience out on time.
Great. One quick recommendation I can say is really the training aspects of an employee and changing the cultural mindset of how you serve clients, really becoming that consultant versus just an employee saying, can I help you and look over here. To bring in and to support all of the omni-channel structures and the empowerment and engagement of the client, it really comes down to the training and support of employees.
Well, Stephen, thanks for that final word. We're going to have to leave it there because that wraps up our web conference for today. And for anyone wishing to revisit this presentation or who wishes to tell their colleagues about it, we're going to be posting it on the RIS News website at www.risnews.com. And I really want to thank our expert panelists for joining us today on the POS topic of great importance to all retailers, especially the ones listening to today, who 70% of which had POSs that are older than 7 years. Thank you so much, Sahir, Rob, and Stephen for being here and providing us with your excellent expert insights.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, and thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone in attendance. Please join us again for the next RIS web session, and have a great day.